And just while I'm on the subject of the Albanese government's attitude towards Israel, I've got to say this. Australia's Special Envoy to Combat Antisemitism should quit in disgust. The Albanese government's insistence that it can't consider the recommendations of her report into anti-Semitism until they receive a report into Islamophobia is as absurd as it is shameful. It's now clear that the government-appointed envoy is being used by Anthony Albanese as a kind of political fig leaf to cover his intent to do nothing about attacks on Jews in this country. Jillian Segal took her job seriously when she was tasked with guiding the government on a plan to tackle rampant Jew hatred. She met with communities, she compiled data, she listened to the fear and pain gripping Jewish Australians, and she's produced a report full of practical recommendations. But instead of responding with urgency, the government has taken that report and shoved it into the pending pile. Education Minister Jason Clare insisted that the government would not even consider her recommendations to combat anti-Semitism until it had received a report on Islamophobia in, about a month from now.
I don't intend to look at this report in isolation. That next month the government will receive a report from the Special Envoy in combating Islamophobia, and so we wait to see what his recommendations will be.
So apparently the security of Jewish Australians must now be tethered to a totally unrelated review. And if a synagogue or three burn down in the meantime, oops. So the Jewish community has to sit tight while the government draws moral equivalence between mobs calling for constant harassment of Jews and, well, what exactly? There's no comparable epidemic of attacks on Islamic schools, mosques or businesses in this country. There's no halal cafes being attacked, no Islamic childcare centres being set on fire. But hey, political correctness, not to mention firming up votes in Western Sydney, demands balance. And if Jewish families have to live in fear for a few more weeks or months while the government gets its equality optics in order, well, so be it. No one is fooled by this government. What does Islamophobia have to do with anti-Semitism? Nothing. Except, of course, in the minds of Labor politicians terrified of offending anyone. Except Jews, of course. The delay in considering the anti-Semitism report has zero to do with fairness. It's all about avoidance. The government doesn't want to be accused of favouring one community over another, so instead they're favouring inaction. Well, that's just brilliant, isn't it? Which brings us to the envoy. Jillian Segal should take action, or else she risks being nothing more than the face of a government that has absolutely no intention of taking her seriously. It's now clear that she was recruited to give the illusion of concern. She's being used as, if you will, a human shield behind which Albanese and his spineless cabinet colleagues can hide their refusal to act. If Jillian Segal stays in the role, she risks being complicit in that charade. If she resigns, however, she blows the whole facade wide open. She exposes the government's duplicity, and she calls out the cowardice of a PM who refuses to protect Jewish Australians unless he can do so without, ruffling any feathers. She'd force a national conversation this government is desperate to avoid. The truth is, the envoy has done her job, and now it's time to make sure the government can't pretend to be doing theirs. There's no more honourable act Jillian Segal could perform than to walk away now, not in protest, but in truth. Because pretending this government is serious about combating anti-Semitism only prolongs the danger. So Jillian Segal should resign. Expose them. Force them to explain why the safety of Jewish Australians depends on a completely unrelated report about a threat that doesn't currently exist. And maybe, just maybe, embarrass them into doing something real. Or, failing that, at least make sure Australians know this government doesn't care at